There seem to be quite a lot of people joining. That's good news. So let me first say welcome. My name is Anthony Harling from Harlschon Consulting. And a big thank you to our host for today, Hunt Scanlon Media, for putting on this event. And Hunt Scanlon, as you probably know, one of the leading media organizations covering executive search and all aspects of human talent. And also thank you to Ezekia. Ezekia, some of you will know. For those of you that don't know, Ezekia is a CRM platform and assignment management platform for the executive search industry. It's probably the most sophisticated, most intuitive, and most adaptable system out there. So it's thank you very much to Ezekia as well. I'll just give a brief introduction to each of the panelists today. The format is going to be that after the introduction, we're going to have a discussion on a number of topics that I will introduce. And that discussion will probably be about 30 minutes, maybe 35 minutes. And at the end of that discussion, we'll open it up so that we can deal with your questions. So if you do have any questions that you'd like us to address, either during the webinar or in the Q&A afterwards, please use the chat function or the Q&A at the bottom of your screen and share your questions with us, and we will try and address all your questions either during the session or in the Q&A at the end. So it'll be about an hour. And as I say, we'll be talking for about half an hour, and then we'll open it up. So let me start with Gemma Van Rooyen. Gemma is with Horton International. Gemma is the Global Programs Director from Horton. Is that right, Gemma?
That is right. Thanks, Anthony.
And for those of you who don't know Horton International, it's an international firm covering all industry sectors, operating in some 34 countries. But you're operating globally in terms of the work that you're doing, Gemma. Is that right?
We are, absolutely.
Excellent. And we have Franz. Franz Rois is based in Vienna. Gemma is based in the UK. Franz is based in Austria with Stanton Chase. Stanton Chase, for those of you that don't know, international firm with 70 plus offices. So it's one of the largest firms in the industry, covering all industry sectors and functions. And Franz is the executive director for the organization in Austria. So welcome, Franz. Dr. Sinead Gibney is one of the global senior partners. She's part of the leadership team for Perrett Laver. Perrett Laver has been around for 22 years, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're really quite focused in terms of the sector. So you're covering, what I would call the not-for-profit sector, but really committed to working with organizations seeking positive outcomes in education, research, society, and the environment. And Perrett Laver you're serving clients in, I think, some 70 countries. Is that right, Sinead?
That's correct, yeah.
So across Europe, Middle East, Africa, North America, and Asia Pacific. So that's kind of a quick introduction. My background, I've been in the executive search industry for about 30 years. Started my career with Heidrick & Struggles, and I now work with Harlschon Consulting, providing career transition services for senior executives. Okay, so our topic today is making the most of global reach. So what we want to do is understand how these international firms are able to leverage their global reach in order to provide the right kind of talent solutions for the clients that they're serving. So if I can, I'll start with you, Franz. We're now in the sort of post-COVID era where we're all using video technology to deliver our search assignments. What's the importance of having a global network in this era when we're all using this global technology anyway? Because you are part of a global firm. I guess you live and breathe that every day.
Yeah, that's correct. I say that having a global network, I think, has advantages in many aspects, right? It's reaching out to candidates. It's providing a global community for the various offices that we have in our network. It's for our clients that we can give them a global perspective, that we can serve subsidiaries in various countries with the same level of standard and so on. And obviously, a lot have changed over the last years, with especially in the communication with clients, communication with candidates. A lot of the interviews are done now through video calls. And I would say, well, yeah, it made it easier to reach out, and somehow the distances seem to be shorter. I think nothing can replace the personal touch that you need in a certain market when you want to connect to candidates and knowing who are the right candidates. I would also say that maybe, let's say, middle market wise, if you search in the middle market, it's not such a big issue. You can maybe more easily reach out to candidates through finding them on LinkedIn and then reaching out to them. But the higher you get, the more important it is to have someone on the ground who really knows the market there, knows the business society there, has excellent connections, knows who is on the move, who has made recently a move, who are the important people to talk to, who could be the right fit. And for this you need someone there, and not just someone. You better have someone there who has a lot of experience, a great network, and a very senior person, yeah, to have the right connections there.
And is it the case that you have to know the people personally? I mean, I'm sure with some of the people, they don't accept a call from everybody, and it's useful if you have that direct relationship with a particular executive.
I don't know if you need to know everyone personally, but like you said, there's this saying that everyone knows everyone else in the world through 3 connections or something like this. So I think though it's important to have a strong network, and maybe you don't know this one person personally, but you know who to ask, yeah, about this other person. That's the important thing, If you just, how to say, have no relation, no connection, and no way to find out really trustworthy information about an important candidate, then you have an issue. So you just need to know the market. You don't need to know them personally, but you need to understand also, I would say, in many aspects. I don't even know where to start, for example, but how to read a CV. You need to understand, I don't know, if you're in Italy and you read a CV of a CFO there, you need to understand the market there to really interpret it correctly. What does this mean? What do certain station means? How could they have influenced the candidate? Yeah. And for this, you need to really understand the local culture there and be there.
Sinead, in the market that you serve, where you're doing a lot of work in higher education, how important are those personal relationships? Because I'm sure there are some people that you will have known for many years before they actually become a candidate on a search.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just on that last point, Anthony, we very much see candidates turn into clients as they go through the evolution of their career. I think I would echo a lot of what Franz was saying, is that the balance between having a global network where you can identify a diverse pool of candidates who are, the right fit for a role, regardless of where they are based in the world, is of huge benefit. But being able to mix that in with being locally connected, understanding the culture of an organization, understanding the culture of the broader ecosystem that this person will operate in is equally important. I think having a strong network of individuals on the ground and understanding, again, people's career journey and who are going to be the next generation of leaders in an organization, of course, is hugely beneficial. But there's definitely a benefit of balancing both, I think, in terms of the global and the local. Yeah.
And does that kick in also in terms of having the cooperation with your different colleagues in different locations?
Yeah, very much so, very much so. And it'll depend on the role, of course. There will be some roles. We work in higher education, we work in research organizations, we work in not-for-profit organizations, so quite a variety. And it'll very much depend on what is, of course, required of the role. In some particular organizations, having a deep understanding of the local context, so the regulatory context, for example, is going to be really important. But then on the flip side, it might be about the skill set that the individual brings with regards to their research profile, for example. So in that regard, in the latter example, it's not necessarily about finding someone who knows already what's going on the ground, but of course they need to be able to adapt their existing experience and skill set to the local market as and when needed.
Yeah, I think that's the point you were making, Franz, isn't it? You really need to know the person and actually really know what's happening. And Gemma, for Horton, I mean, you're a global firm as well, and I'm sure you have a lot of cooperation between different offices. How much of that involves you picking candidates from one geography and using them on a search which you're doing in a different country?
I think that over the past 10 years, the world has suddenly got a lot smaller in that sense. And there's a lot of people relocating, a lot of executives working out of one country, but living in another country, you know, increasingly in Europe, that's a situation that we have. So it's become more and more important for us to be agile enough to be able to, and this is echoing what both Franz and Sinead have said, to have the cultural understanding and the on-the-ground network that is needed in a country, but also to have a international understanding. You know, most of our clients are international in some capacity now, particularly with private equity investing in sort of multiple geographies. That's a large part of what we do. So it's really important for us to be able to be bespoke in a way that suits both the location where the client is, but looking outside of that area is really important, I would think.
Franz, I wanted to ask you something. You know, in the work that you're doing, it's often quite important, I guess, to help the client, who may be based outside your country, but help the client understand what the local situation is in Austria, for example. Do you find that's kind of a big factor in what you're doing when you're part of an international team?
No, this is definitely a big factor that we help our clients all over the world to a little bit what I said before, you know, to understand what certain elements around the candidate, what they mean, what a position means in a certain market, what the expectations can be towards a certain position in the market. Also, from the very simple things like, is it easy to find someone in another market with that background, or is it difficult? What's the salary level, and so on? But also, like, what type of people would fit there? What typically are the cultures? But what we also see on the other side is, I think that we see more and more clients actually who say, actually, we don't care where this person sits. You know, it doesn't have to be in a certain market, maybe not all over the world. Yeah, but they say, like, look, we have big operations or in let's take Europe, in France, Germany, UK, Italy. So he can be in any of those countries. Yeah. So you need to be able to find the best person in all of those countries and reach out. And this is obviously where a network usually helps. Yeah. And they can, then you need to just, you know, find the right person for the right culture in the specific market.
Sinead, in terms of how things have evolved over the last few years, are you seeing a greater proportion of your work in regardless of what area, but is it a greater proportion of that where you're taking candidates from one location and placing them in a different one?
Yeah, like I definitely think there has been trends. So there's been changes over the past few. We've always worked in a global way, so very much part of our USP has always been that global network and moving candidates globally, and it's how we grew as a firm, actually. But I think when we talk about technology, and Franz and Gemma already referenced some of this, technology has changed how we interact with people. You know, pre-COVID, the thoughts of building a relationship with a candidate on the other side of the world through email or phone, that just wasn't a thing. But now we see it happening both in terms of our engagement with candidates, but we also see it happening between clients and candidates. That, you know, if you can begin engaging, or you bring the client and the candidate together at an early stage of the process in a more informal way, there's a higher chance, what we've seen, there's a higher chance in terms of actually securing an appointment through that process, because people it's a candidate friendly process. People are much more comfortable around the fit of the organization. To Gemma's point, I think hybrid working has also changed people's attitudes. So we very much, for certain organizations where they would never consider a global field because the individual had to be based in a country full time, and that would absolutely limit the candidate pool that was available. That's changed, not for all organizations. You know, sometimes you absolutely need to be on the ground, and that's always going to continue. But for others, the openness to have people on the ground a couple of days a month, for example, again, that never would have happened pre-COVID. So I think it really has encouraged organizations to truly embrace a global field of candidates, and that means that there's a greater chance that they will get the best candidate for the role rather than the local candidate who happens to be on the ground.
And are there more people now who are moving internationally? I mean, it's a greater demand from the clients for multi-country capability.
Again, I think we've seen it. I'd be interested in Gemma and Franz's view. We've seen it in different ways in different places. So we have seen less appetite to move lock, stock and barrel to the other side of the world, because I think what happened in terms of COVID was that people felt even more disconnected from a personal perspective from family, for example. But in terms of people's I think, again, it comes back to the hybrid working policy in terms of people's appetite to take a role that might be in a different country with the view that they actually don't need to move fully. They don't necessarily need to move their family. There's some of those personal considerations perhaps aren't as to the fore as much as they used to be.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your observation, Gemma? Is it more international now?
I'm with Sinead on that, like you totally made people reprioritize family, home, where they are, all of those things. And it's helped us in a respect, actually, because it's broadened our talent pools, because this remote working has just had to be part of life for companies. So it's been an interesting one to see it unfold, because as Sinead said, there were situations that would have been completely unacceptable to clients of ours 4 years ago, and now people are much more flexible. I think that the clients' priorities have changed too. We're seeing much more prioritization around diversity, equity, and inclusion than location, for instance. And it's more about finding the absolute right fit culturally within an organization, where perhaps that was less so, and the focus was more on previous experience. So it feels like things are shifting, and the priorities of both our clients and candidates have changed.
Yeah. Franz, I wanted to ask you, I mean, the structure of your firm, Stanton Chase, is such that your local partners are really the owners of the firm, aren't they? They're not the employees, they're effectively the owners of the firm. How does that reflect the relationship that you have and your ability to support clients in their activities?
Mm-hmm. I think it plays a huge role, actually. We see that because we have owners in the market, we have a much stronger, how can I say, stability there. Also a different approach to the market, a much more long-term approach. Owners are typically ready to invest, let's say, more time or go even through a longer period of investment until they reap certain benefits out of their work. So they have a more long-term view on the business. And we also see that they seem to connect in terms of clients with a different type of people there. Yeah. So I think like when we look at our owner, they often resonate very well with the owners of the clients. Yeah. And the really the top people there. Because somehow, yeah, they have the same way to go about business, the same entrepreneurial spirit, moving forward, and that's a huge connection. And what also is, it's the stability. We see our owners stay forever until they retire often, and then we have actually several cases where the sons or daughters actually took over the business, which is very nice.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Very heartwarming stories there when the kids come in and take over, and sometimes are much more successful than their parents. Everyone's astonishment. That's fun, but that's really appreciated, I think, by a lot of clients, that they see it's not an employee who is here today and just does it for a salary, and then maybe next day he's gone, moved to the competition. I'm not saying that all the employees move around all the time, but it's just a different way of how you approach the business, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And I think also, Sinead, when you are you're at the front line and you also own the business, you know, it's different because each search is more critical to you, isn't it, than if it's if you're part of a mega firm, I think.
Yeah, so we actually have a slightly different model. So we don't have local partners who own the business. We very much work as one global firm. So we have offices based across Middle East, Europe, North America, and Asia Pac, but still operating as one firm. What's slightly different actually is that we're an employee-owned trust. So what this means is that all employees are invested in the success of the firm. And I think that since we became an employee-owned trust, you can definitely see the cultural impact in a positive way that's had.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And Gemma, I think Horton as well. You're locally owned, aren't you, by the partners in the firm? So
we are. So there's a very entrepreneurial spirit in Horton because each country is autonomously owned by the partners within that country, but everyone is a stakeholder within Horton International as a global brand. So I think it gives us a nice balance of the two. And we have a saying within the business that we're small enough to care, but large enough to deliver internationally. And as trite as it might sound, it's the truth of it. And, you know, I think that having locally owned offices sometimes gives you a leg up because of the investment in the emotional investment in those businesses, and it, you know, gives the partners very much a sense of legacy and wanting to build those businesses and ensure that the talent coming into the business is retained. And to create those sort of long-term relationships with clients. It's not transactional at all, and we're really proud of that.
Yeah. Can I ask a follow-up question, Gemma? In terms of like your ability to be more agile or more innovative, how does your structure help you to do that?
Well, I think, as I said, you know, we're small enough on the ground to be invested in a personal way in the relationships with our clients, which there's, you know, a lot of our business is repeat business in each country because of that. And, you know, in different countries, there are different cultural requirements and different expectations from clients. For instance, the Middle East, we do a lot of work with family office businesses. And, you know, the way in which we interact with them is very different than the way in which we interact with large blue chip companies who we work with elsewhere in consumer or FMCG or whatever it might be. And we do have that level of flexibility where we can provide very bespoke services. But what we do also try and do is ensure that there is a level of continuity across our brand, that if you engage with a Horton International office in one country, you know what you're getting in another country. And there's that sort of quality assurance aspect is one of the pillars of what we think makes us a great organization.
And Gemma, I mean, sorry, Sinead, your organization, you know, you've obviously had the opportunity to develop over the last 20 years, but how much is that driven in terms of your agility and your innovation? How much of that is driven by the structure of the firm?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a chicken and the egg story, really, isn't it? It's the innovation and the entrepreneurialism that really drove the growth of the business. And I think the colleagues at Perrett Laver are a testament to that. But I think, you know, balancing the being locally connected, to echo what Gemma said, around the delivering a personalized approach for clients, I think is really, really important. But there's huge power in being able to balance that with the global knowledge. So understanding what are the global trends that are affecting comparable organizations across the world. So being able to bring both to the fore, hugely beneficial. So we operate in a T-shaped model. So through our cross-cutting global sector groups, we share knowledge about global trends. We share knowledge about who are the transformational leaders in organizations globally who can really make an impact in a client's organizations if they're appointed, but balancing that with the deep understanding of the local context. So making sure that we are aligning with any regulations around appointment processes, for example, and that happens all the time. Again, we work with publicly funded organizations, so they often have quite tight regulations around how they appoint people. So being able to adapt our processes to make sure that it is personalized for different clients in different countries, again, really, really important for us.
Yeah, and Franz, I'm sure that Stanton Chase, you need to have that flexibility to adapt your process or whatever locally, don't you?
Yeah, very much. I mean, there's always a balance. You always need to strike a balance between like how much do you keep uniform and how much do you adapt to your local market, right? And we very much feel that, let's say, in terms of quality and also our branding, like you can see and so on, we don't take any compromise. And we allow the local entrepreneur and the local owner to do the best for the client, yeah, and what is needed for the client. And I think this also, let's say, drives very much that the agility that you guys were also talking about is like when you work as a global firm, you can do things that as a small local firm you could not, only just because of pure financial reasons, right? You have the possibility to take big investments, take bigger bets, roll it out more professionally, something that a smaller local firm could not do, or I mean, they could do it, but at a very big cost, yeah. But on the other hand, it's also like, especially technology or whatever, firms like or solutions like Ezekia help us actually to run this global business in a very coordinated and smooth way, that each one has the information that they need, that they work on a local basis, but fully connected all the time. They see what's going on in other markets, what projects are going on there, how do the other people work, and even if you cooperate in a single project with other markets, you always have the information there. So it's really like both. It's the global size, I think, is a driver for technology, because it's needed, but also it allows you to stay on the forefront because you bundle your resources to make things happen.
Gemma, how does a firm like Perrett Laver, how do you make big decisions around investments in technology like a global database or AI? And because there are some big investments that you have to make to stay ahead of the game.
There are, and particularly with the sort of advent of all of this generative AI technology and it being all sort of rolled out over the last 18 months, it's so important to stay current, and that, is for me a never-ending task, looking at all of these different technologies. And I mean, Ezekia is one part of that, which has been very helpful for us as a global business development tool. So that's where we sort of house all of our collaboration in terms of clients. Mm-hmm. But also we are constantly assessing tools, and I think that we really operate as a democracy when it comes to these things, because the importance has to be seen as universal for a tool, otherwise the adoption is terrible. Yeah. So we've found that rather than going away as a board and making these decisions alone, it's much better to get the investment of the stakeholders in terms of their interest in a tool. And we're forever trying to make sure that we're at the forefront of that, rather than sort of picking up tools as they become normalized and naturalized.
Can I ask you, Sinead? I mean, introducing something like Ezekia as a global platform for Perrett Laver, how has that changed your business, or how has that supported your business?
It's hugely valuable. So again, we work as a one global firm, so all of our colleagues have access to the same CRM system and all of the data that's within that. So there's a huge amount of knowledge, both in terms of candidates, but also about clients, sector trends. We use it for business development, tracking business development, market feedback. So it's really, really valuable in terms of informing not just people within an office, but also making sure that that is shared across all of our global offices. So hugely important. And being able to explain to clients that they have access to our global networks through this CRM system is, again, something that they really, really value.
That's very powerful. I mean, I'm sure for Stanton Chase, Franz, this was, when you've got 70 offices, it's really critical that you have some common knowledge platform. And I'm just interested to see how Ezekia has affected you and your business.
Yeah, I mean, we had Ezekia made a lot of possible. I wouldn't say that, let's say, without Ezekia, we were not coordinated. We always had our means to work, and I would say these technology tools are very important, I would say. We also realized, though, that they don't replace personal contact, right? And I also, we invest actually a lot of time and also money into meeting personally several times a year on a regional basis or on a global basis, the shareholders or the consultants or the researchers or whatever, just to make sure that, we know each other. It's a completely different thing if you work with someone in a different continent, and you've seen them just like 3-4 weeks ago, maybe had a couple beers somewhere in a bar with them, and then you work with them, and it's a completely different way. And I think the clients feel that they feel that, and it's not only the clients, but also it makes the people in the organization much happier. The satisfaction that you get out of your business, if you know that you're part of something big and you know them, it's much higher. The satisfaction is much higher. But obviously, I'll say, if that is supported by good technology, then even better, right? So you can build on that. You can trust the technology. You have the information in your fingertips. That's obviously a huge help.
Yeah, and Gemma, you're able to now leverage that global platform and share client information with your colleagues and everything across Horton International, aren't you?
We are, yes, and that is hugely helpful. Though I would definitely echo Franz's sentiment in the sense that meeting in person is really the thing that creates the business development opportunities in our organization. Ezekia supports it wonderfully, as does our Microsoft environment that we use for our SharePoint. But I would say that a large percentage of our cross-border searches have happened because of the friendships within this group of people, and as twee as it might sound, it's really a family sort of atmosphere, and that, I think, is reflected to our clients. There's a very strong stream of culture that goes through Horton globally, although there's so many different countries and so many different personalities and all of these things, and we're covering so many verticals as a generalist firm, but there is a level of continuity in terms of the culture, and there's something quite reassuring about that for clients.
Yeah. Sinead, can I ask you, when you made that move as a firm to the Ezekia platform, obviously, and this is a question that somebody's asked about sort of how you can legally construct this global database, because there are obviously the GDPR requirements, and you've got operations in North America and Australia and different places. So the whole kind of information requirement is quite specific, isn't it? So how have you got over that? How have you dealt with that?
Yeah, so I don't think it was as much of a challenge for us because we don't have, we're not a franchise. So we don't have separate legal entities, and we're not protected in different regions by that. So I think, again, what benefits us hugely is the one firm approach. So the data sharing then for us is less of a challenge.
Yeah. And for Franz, for Stanton Chase, how did you, I mean, was the GDPR issue a problem, and were you able to deal with that? How was that dealt with? How was that addressed?
I wouldn't say it's a problem, but it's something definitely that we need to watch and manage carefully every day. We do regular audits also on all fronts. I'm not a lawyer, so I wouldn't want to, let's say, give out recommendations on how to deal with that. But we do have lawyers involved who give us advice. I think the easiest thing is more like, okay, how do you deal with candidate data when it comes in, ask for consent and so on. For storing, that's normal things. Sharing it globally, sharing it with clients globally, also outside the organization, it's getting a little bit more tricky. So I can only recommend get the right advice to make sure that you do the right thing and the data is protected. It's important.
But I'm sure there were concerns, before you moved across to this global platform, there were concerns about the legal implication of sharing data across the firm. But has that worked within Ezekia, or are you
Yes.
obviously confident that it does work?
Yeah, it does work. Yeah, no, it does work, but it needs, let's say, a second stream on the side of a legal protection and actions that you need to take. So that is important, and there were concerns, but we took those concerns very serious and investigated that and came up with appropriate legal solutions to make sure that everything is fully compliant. And we were talking about GDPR, but there are also other regulations out there. There's the California Privacy Act and things like this. So it's not just GDPR. You need to nowadays look at various regulations from various countries. But usually, if you follow GDPR, which is one of the strongest, you're pretty well protected. But nevertheless, you need to really be aware of what's going on in every single market. That's why it's also good that we have owners there, entrepreneurs there who take responsibility, and they say, "Hey guys, we have this situation here. We need to deal with that," and then we are able to take it up.
Yeah. Okay. Sinead, I'm sure you had the same sort of issue in terms of getting, the legal cover, but also being confident that the framework that you were building on was going to be compliant.
Absolutely. And again, same as Franz, I'm not a legal expert, so I won't go into the ins and outs. We have a very competent COO who has been leading it in that and continuously monitors it, because of course regulations are changing in all of our markets all of the time. So it's just making sure that we're on top of the local issues and making sure that we are being compliant alongside those.
I've got a follow-up question here, which I don't know if you can address for me initially, Gemma. The question is, GDPR requires that data be stored in the EU. How can that be handled in a global context? Do you have a view on that? Do you have an experience of that?
So we're very cautious about the data that we hold within the global database. We do run local databases with the sensitive information in order to cover us in that way. But I mean, we're lucky also in terms of that Ezekia, is within the confines of the EU. I believe that there's a Netherlands data center, so that kind of protects us for now. But I mean, echoing the sentiments of everyone else and not wanting to give any legal advice, but erring on the side of caution is generally our stance.
Yeah. And Franz, I'm sure that Stanton Chase have obviously considered that, because that's kind of one of the founding principles of GDPR, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the storage of data is one issue. I would say probably maybe even one of the easier to manage. I think it's not just storing. No, it's also the moment you share it, and we want to share it, with outside of the European Union, and then it automatically gets stored in a different place. Then it becomes more tricky. But then again, please consult the lawyer of your confidence. To get the appropriate.
All of you have basically, you've looked at that issue. You were aware of that issue, but you found appropriate solutions that allow you to deal with that effectively. Can I just sort of one final topic, which if I could start with you, Sinead, there are obviously big investment decisions ahead in terms of AI and stuff like that. So, how do you see your firm addressing some of those big investment decisions in the future?
Yeah, so I think a key part of what we do is setting out a technology strategy for the business, and that, of course, AI is part of that, but it's much broader. Some of these, obviously, we've discussed already. Ezekia, our CRM system. There's also investment in video conferencing. People have referenced the fact that making sure that colleagues are globally connected as much as being able to connect well with candidates and clients. So there's investment there. There's investment in cloud-based systems. SharePoint, Gemma mentioned already. So I think there's a broader view of technology that we need to continuously be looking at. Absolutely, AI is important here. It's moving so fast. The evolution of AI is just beyond people's imagination, I think, at the moment. So it's making sure that you are, I think, trying to be at the forefront, but not being a slave to it. And apologies for echoing again what Franz and Gemma said, but I think it's really important to continuously remember we're a people business. What we do is engage with people. We're a decision-making business, and absolutely technology should support what we do, but it can never replace what we do. So making sure that we are using it to enhance what we're doing rather than, as I said, replace.
Yeah. And Gemma, I mean, obviously, it's the same question to you, really, in terms of the future investments, and do you have a structure within Horton that enables you to do that?
We do. And it's very much part of my role assessing new technologies and technologies to sort of streamline and support our processes. I think in our industry, we've all had moments of concern about how technology is going to affect our business, and whether as human beings we're going to be phased out of it. So I would say that I feel very much the same as Sinead does, in the sense that we need to hang on to the human aspect of our business, and actually it's a very consultative thing to be placing executives into businesses and seeing their impact on those businesses to come. And although we can use technology to support all of our processes and make things more efficient, faster, all of these things, that we do have to be mindful when we're investing that as Sinead said, it should be in a supporting role. However, the investment needs to be significant, and increasingly we're all seeing a much larger portion of the funds that we have to invest going into technology, and perhaps replacing some of the sort of lower level positions in organizations like ours. And I don't know how that will play out ultimately for marketing and those sort of supportive functions, but for now it's being helpful to us, and a constant source of worry all at the same time.
Yeah. Franz, if I remember correctly, I think Stanton Chase used to have like a group within the firm who were looking at future developments of technology. Is that still the way that you operate, and so you can anticipate those big investment decisions?
Yeah, exactly. Very much. Yeah, we try to take let's say, very strategic approach to it. We realize also that, let's say, there's so many solutions out there. So if you how to say, start looking at individual solutions and trying them out, and you can just get crazy. Yeah. So we really try to think, okay, where do we actually want to innovate, along our process or our value chain, because let's say if we go into the core area, which I would say is maybe finding, selecting, and recommending candidates, is it really there that we want to heavily place our confidence in AI? Especially, I don't know if you might have heard that some of the solutions that were hyped in this area then showed a strong bias, obviously, to existing patterns that were already there. So obviously the systems are not very good in innovating. Yeah. So we really try to think, okay, where do we want to go? In which areas we want to invest, and where do we want to be on the forefront? We try to be more cautious, I would say, in this core element, and also see, okay, how can this system support us? I think it's super important that the final decision, and also even before that, the final recommendation is always done by a human, and really understands what's going on there, understands how this data is collected, why the data shows those results, and then can make the right recommendation. Whereas maybe I would say on the other areas in marketing, identifying potential clients, situations within clients that make us reach out to these clients and ask if they need support or something like this. I think there we see much more imminent and better possibilities to work with that. And it's exciting times ahead, I would say.
And Gemma, in terms of like how you're obviously working with this Ezekia platform, and they talk a lot about innovation and constant innovation that they're doing. Does that really make a difference in terms of what you're doing and how you're able to use the platform?
Absolutely. Ezekia have been really, really great at being very responsive to things that we come up with that we need to improve processes. And particularly there's a market mapping feature that's coming out soon that was a big ask from our team in Germany, who sort of said, we can't make a move from our existing CRM until that's happened. And Joseph and the team have gone away and got it sorted. And to have that sort of level of responsiveness from a tech provider is unusual. I think we've all had nightmares with LinkedIn Recruiter lately, and they couldn't really care less about our opinion. So it's really, really nice to be valued and to have that sort of input in the build of a product.
Yeah. And Sinead, what's been your experience of working with that tool?
Yeah, I would agree with Gemma. I think the responsiveness and the partnership building with Ezekia has been immensely helpful. They're so responsive, and just listen to what we need as a firm. It's not just about, oh, this is the sector standard and this is therefore what you need to do. They really want to support us in terms of what works best for us as a firm and how we work. And I think, as Gemma said, that's not the norm in the sector.
Can I just ask to finish with you, Franz? I mean, what's been your experience? Have you found them to be responsive? Have you found it to be something that's innovative? What's been your experience of working with that tool?
If I think like this about the Ezekia, they remind me actually a little bit like what Gemma also said. How do you say it? Big enough to how to say it?
Yeah, small enough to care, but big enough to deliver.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Sorry for not being able, but that's exactly what Ezekia is, I think, and that is, I think, what we all appreciate about it, right? They are small enough to listen to us and care and so on, but they're big enough also to produce very high quality work and follow international trends and pick them up and implement them like AI and so on. So I think it's the right tool for us. Yeah.
I've got a follow-up question here from somebody. I don't know who it is, but the question specifically is, how does Ezekia perform in the US? Sinead, what's been your experience?
Again, I think I'd have to revert to individuals who had a deeper knowledge of that in terms of our US managing partners. I don't think we've had any challenges from any of our global colleagues in terms of how Ezekia operates. So no comment in it operating different in different regions, to be honest.
And Gemma, same. What about for you?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we sort of see uniformity across the board when it comes to Ezekia. Maybe it's the sort of not actively looking aspect of things that this person is asking about, and I couldn't speak to that too much. That being said, I know our colleagues in the US have used and been happy with it. So yeah, no, I'm sorry, not the most helpful, but
Franz,
if there was something challenging, I would have heard about it.
Yeah, of course. But Franz, you have a big portion of your partner group is US based, aren't they?
And they're using Ezekia very heavily and to their highest satisfaction, so no issue. I think I don't see also that the tool is very, let's say, geographically independent. Yeah, you can use it wherever you want. I don't know, the integration with not actively looking maybe, or how to say, you might get different or more candidates or whatever in certain geographies, but we don't use this part of the system. So our US colleagues are very happy with it.
Excellent, excellent. Cool. Well, listen, unless there are some more questions, I'm inviting anybody who is on the webinar today. If you have some more questions, please let us know, and we will we'll address those. Let me just deal with something very different. Sinead, if I can ask you, what do you see changing in the future? I'm not going to give you a time frame, but just what do you see that's going to change in the world of executive search?
Oh goodness, it's a very big question, Anthony. I think it's multifaceted. So when we think about technology, absolutely, there's no escaping it. AI is going to have a significant impact on executive search. We need to embrace it, but we also need to approach with a certain degree of caution. And I think we've discussed a lot of that today. I think definitely the field of executive, I can only talk for the sectors that we work in, but the world is becoming a smaller place. So being globally connected is so much easier than it used to be. I think the appetite for individuals engaging in a global process absolutely, again, has increased over the years. It's really important for the organizations that we work with that they can't operate in a vacuum if they want to continue having an impact on society in the way that they do. We can go on about geopolitical trends and political trends around nationalism, and absolutely that is something that we have seen affect some of our searches and some of our clients. But I think that globalization of all of our clients' needs and of course the candidate feels is going to continue.
Yeah. Franz, what's your experience? What do you think might change in the future in executive search?
What might change? I think that we do have this trend that because of the technology and also AI and things like this, that maybe the middle ground will feel more pressure here. Yeah, this is more easy to substitute, easier searches, more standardized positions, and so on. I think these firms that specialize on that will have a harder time in the future. Whereas I think those firms that specialize on higher levels, very specific positions that are very hard to find, where you need a lot of experience, a big understanding, cultural understanding, and so on. I think those where technology is maybe less able to support in a very good way, actually those positions will be harder to fill and actually will also derive a higher fee or higher margins from the client. So I think firms are well advised to try to work on the highest possible level if they can, and the middle ground I think will have a tough time in the future.
Yeah. Gemma, any thoughts for you? What's going to change in the future?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the globalization is a big one for us. Technology is a big one, but also in recent years we've seen a lot of focus being put on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I would say that the sort of more current one that we're seeing is around corporate social responsibility and ESG. A lot of our clients are becoming B Corp certified, and that's becoming much more of a focus for them. And actually our UK partner, Drake Darcy, has just got their B Corp certification. And that really, I think, is important for some of the emerging markets that we're working with, you know, in terms of the renewables and energy markets. I think that there's a lot more being put into what these organizations look like in terms of their social impact. And that's having to become much more of a consideration for us when we're performing searches. And the other thing that we're seeing a lot of is assessment being a much more required form of looking at candidates than it ever has been in the past. So tools like Hogan, you know, we use a whole suite of tools across Horton, some better known than others, but clients are definitely looking for proper assessment and using assessment technologies a lot more. So we do put a lot of our resources into making sure that we're all accredited for using those sorts of tools as it becomes more of a requirement.
I mean, my own observation, for what it's worth, is that I think that over the last 10 years, we've seen a lot of people from the executive search business moving into the client organizations in different areas. And so my observation, just as an outsider, is that I think that the clients are getting a lot smarter. And therefore, I think the demands will be much more. So whatever is important to them, I think it's going to go up. I think it's going to become much more difficult for the search firms. And I think that the great firms are going to stand out and survive. But I think the firms that are not global, that don't have that real expertise, are going to suffer. I think you're all going to have to be at the top of your game all the time. And that's where I think your firms, or the three of you represent, have a huge advantage. Yeah, cool.
Thank you.
Well, listen, thank you all very much. Really great. Thank you for joining us, everybody, for this Harlschon webinar today. Thank you to Dr. Sinead Gibney. Thank you to Gemma Van Rooyen, and thank you for Franz Rois in Austria. Thank you all very much indeed. And we will send out, I think Harlschon will send out a recording. So if you missed the early part of the session, you'll be able to watch the recording. But thank you all very much, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.